Where do the laws that defend human life come from? Find out next on this edition of Life Matters. Brian Johnston is the Western Director of the National Right to Life Committee. He has served in many capacities while advocating for innocent lives. As California Commissioner on Aging, as Chairman of the California Pro-Life Council, on the board of the National Legal Center for the Medically Dependent and Disabled. And now here's our host, Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters. We're your program on the right to life, on what it really means. You know, the right to life is a phrase. It's a phrase that comes from our founding documents. It's an actual statement of political philosophy that our founders insisted be an essential element of our founding. That natural law has revealed that there is a creator and that your life has come from your creator, not from the government. But that the government has a duty to protect your life and the lives of all the innocent under its authority. This is critically important. Of course, it goes on in our founding documents to point out that the government's authority actually comes from your life. So your life is very, very important, and the lives of all the innocent. That's what the right to life is. And those of you who follow the debate in our culture today know that the Roe versus Wade decision, we're going to talk about Roe v. Wade today, and the companion decision, Doe versus Bolton. But you know that this debate has been about those babies' lives that were denied starting in January of 1973. So the right to life is an incredibly important issue. It's not fully understood. That's what I have found. And part of the problem is that Roe versus Wade itself is not fully understood. In fact, I'll go this far. Roe versus Wade does not even make sense. And you may say, well, of course you're going to say that because you're Mr. Pro-Life. But no, even those who are abortion advocates, even those who want abortion for the sake of choice, they will admit it is not well reasoned. They don't like how Justice Blackmun wrote the decision. They know it is not rooted in actual constitutional law. And you're going to hear more about that. But most importantly, we're going to talk as well about the companion decision, Doe v. Bolton. Doe versus Bolton is a conjoined twin decision that came down the same day. The laws of Texas were brought into question in the case of Roe v. Wade. The laws of Georgia had been brought into question, the abortion laws of Georgia. And they had been deliberated by the court, but they decided to hand down both of those decisions on the same day, January 22nd of 1973. Most people don't know that there's a companion decision, nor do they know the most important aspect of that companion decision. It's the companion decision to Roe, Doe v. Bolton. That's what empowers the widespread abuse of abortion and late-term abortion, the very unreasonable things that you've heard about, the selling of babies' body parts, all of the really creepy stuff. You read Roe and you go, how can they sell body parts? It doesn't seem like it says that in Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade can't be understood. I just told you that. Roe v. Wade does not make sense. And you're going to hear about that from some of the most radical pro-aborts who do not like Roe v. Wade. But it's Doe v. Bolton that empowers the abortion practices in our nation today. So you have to know about both decisions. I'm writing a book. It's going to be released this spring, the spring of 2021. It's called The Evil Twins, Roe and Doe, How the Supreme Court Unleashed Medical Killing. We'll talk about that again. It'll be available. It's available right now for pre-order on Amazon. But today we're going to focus on Roe, on just Roe v. Wade and some of its folly. Then also I had some requests. Folks want to know more about my background. And just like you, I've got a diverse background. Yeah, I'm an interesting person. And the reason I say that is you are too. And again, back to our founders, it's an amazing assertion. But our founders are asserting that you are unique, that you are, if you're a Judeo-Christian of any kind, you know what they're talking about. You're made in the image of God. So every human being has this precious gift of life, and it's a unique human life. No two of us are the same. Even identical twins have some differences. So life is a great gift. People have asked me, well, you cover so many things, Brian. You cover all of these topics. What's your background? And I'll give you a little bit today. I will have to wait for another time to give you my full bio to bore you with that. But I am somewhat immersed in legal principles. I'm not a bar lawyer, but I have been immersed in the law, quite strangely. My folks came here from Ireland after World War II, and I was the firstborn in this country from our family. All of my other sibs were born in Ireland. So they came to California, and my dad had an uncle here who helped sponsor him, and my dad then went into business in Southern California. We had a next-door neighbor who was an attorney, Mr. Thornton, and they also had a large family. It was a Boston Irish family. They had moved to California because Mr. Thornton had worked for the U.S. Attorney's Office in Los Angeles, and he then went into private practice. And he asked me to come to work at his law firm in downtown L.A., literally on Wilshire Boulevard. L.A. law. So I was working in an L.A. law firm, and that was back in the 70s. So when I was a young kid in high school, I worked at a law firm. I was serving process and copying briefs and getting client signatures. I got to know the downtown LA area and that part of the world. It actually was an entertainment law firm. And ironically, this has a point. Ironically, the founder of the firm, what's known as the rainmaker for that law firm, he had been the special agent in charge of the FBI in Los Angeles. His name was William G. Simon. And William G. Simon was one of the founding members of the FBI. He was actually from the first generation of the FBI. He actually had been personally hired right out of the box by J. Edgar Hoover, and they were dear friends. What happened is that he came to Los Angeles, and I'm going to explain to you how they became an entertainment law firm and how I got immersed in entertainment law when I was still in high school in my first year of college. And when we come back, I'll go into that, and I'll relate it to right now and to the FBI of right now. And then I'm going to bring it full circle to the discussion of abortion in our nation and the decisions of Roe versus Wade and Doe v. Bolton. So stand by. I'll fill you in on that. We're going somewhere. It has to do with the law and why the law should protect innocent human lives.
Life Matters continues after this.
Well, now we have a special opportunity for Life Matters listeners wherever you are. You can be on the air. That's right. If you have a question for Life Matters, we have a special way for you to ask that question. Tell us where you're listening from, speak slowly and clearly, and you can record a message. Go to lifematters.life. That's lifematters.life. Scroll to the bottom of the page, and there you'll see Send a Message to Brian Johnston. Using your computer's microphone, you can record a message, and it'll record clearly. You can't go longer than 90 seconds, but please feel free. If you have a question or a comment, make sure you keep it polite. We do have to edit, and we can't put impolite stuff on the air, but we do want to hear from you. That's lifematters.life. Scroll to the bottom of the page and give us your thoughts.
And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
So welcome back. I told you we'd come back. I'd explain the law firm of Simon, Sheridan, Murphy, Thornton, and Medvine, where I got to cut my teeth in the world of law. That was an entertainment law firm in Los Angeles. I worked there as a kid and got a lot of exposure to how the law really works. As I mentioned, I am not a bar attorney. I don't practice law, but I've been immersed in the law and around it for a long time. There's other aspects and other things that happen, but that was my real exposure to the law when I was a young man. Simon, Sheridan, Murphy, Thornton, and Medvine. Mr. Simon had been the FBI agent in charge in Los Angeles, and when Ephraim Zimbalist wanted to do a TV show on the FBI, he hired Bill Simon to be the advisor on the FBI story. That's a TV show from the 60s. Some of you may remember it, the FBI story. After that, William G. Simon decided he'd go into entertainment law, and this is a rather substantial law firm. I was honored to be part of this firm. Many of the clients were very well-known stars, both of the old era and then into the 60s and 70s. I met Jimmy Durante, Red Skelton. I would bring their paperwork to them for signature. There's quite a few stars that maybe you may not know them if you're a younger person, but Mickey Rooney, I think Mickey Rooney is one of the most extraordinary. He is Hollywood. If you know his real story, he was involved in Hollywood at the very beginning of the talkies, and he lived a long life. I actually met him later in life as well. But this law firm was important. As I said, it was founded by one of the founding agents of the FBI. Years later, in my Right to Life work in Sacramento, one of our key volunteers was a gentleman by the name of Richard White. And Richard White volunteered for the California Pro-Life Council and the National Right to Life Committee in our offices. He wanted to be involved. He had been special agent in charge of the FBI in Sacramento. He was a true gentleman. Now, the reason I mention that right now is it was with great sadness I personally saw the changes that came to the FBI in the years around the Trump administration. Many of you know that. There was clear lying and misrepresentation and some very bad actors using their office of the FBI. The Federal Bureau of Investigation was an important entity because up until its founding, it was the states that had to deal with criminals. The FBI allowed the federal government to deal with the interstate criminality that was going on in the 20s and 30s. But they were sworn to fidelity, bravery, and integrity. And that's important because without those oaths, and we've spoken before in this program about the need for police officers, those with the ability to kill, to have strong oaths, to have strong guidelines. And it's tied to the same with doctors. Doctors have the ability, they understand the human body. The Hippocratic Oath, absolutely essential for that profession because you can kill easily. So I was particularly, a personal note, I was particularly offended by what happened to the FBI. Because if the FBI does not have moral integrity and legal integrity, then it's essentially a secret police, as, you know, the KGB or the Gestapo or the Stasi, a secret police that can do whatever it wants. And if these agents don't have the restrictions and commitment and the legal binding limitations, then it's a very scary organization. I love the FBI because of my experience with William G. Simon and Richard White, two very special men who have now passed. So, at any rate, some have asked about my background that got me going in the law and then in entertainment law and intellectual property. But we digress because we're going to talk about Roe v. Wade and why Roe v. Wade is an issue in the whole right to life debate. If you've been around this at all, you know that that's really the beginning of this larger debate about the right to life. They really founded a movement when Justice Blackmun handed down that decision, when it was celebrated by the media. They actually spawned the right to life movement because every state up until 1973, every state had laws that somewhere along the line protected that child's life. Most states starting at conception, but a handful, California, Massachusetts, Colorado, New York, those four had more liberal laws regarding abortion, but they themselves, in those liberalized states, said after a certain point, you can't kill that baby. That perhaps when they're younger, perhaps if there's that standard litany, you've heard it. What about rape? What about incest? What about the life of the mother? What about severe fetal deformity? Whatever that means. Well, why don't we legalize it for that? And those four states had done so. But then they said, after 20 weeks in New York, or 25 weeks, Massachusetts, that's clearly a human baby. You can't kill that baby. Until Roe versus Wade and Doe v. Bolton, January 22nd, 1973. And the Supreme Court struck down all of those state laws. That's hugely significant because now a baby in the womb could be freely killed. If you haven't heard our program before, if this is the first time you've heard Life Matters, we've talked about Roe. and its details. And I'm going to spend a little time talking about Roe. But as I said, you can't fully understand Roe unless you understand its companion decision, Doe v. Bolton. They're literally conjoined twins, is how I like to put it. They are evil twins, and their birthday is January 22nd of 1973. They're companion decisions that together struck down all of the laws protecting babies in the womb in the United States of America. And the repercussions have been great. We're going to talk about Roe in a little more detail when I get back. But again, I want to remind you my book, The Evil Twins, Roe and Doe, How the Supreme Court Unleashed Medical Killing. That's available now for pre-order. And this spring, you can get a copy. That's The Evil Twins, Roe and Doe, How the Supreme Court Unleashed Medical Killing. Available this spring. And you can go to Amazon to get pre-orders. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Life Matters.
Are you willing to step up to be a lifeguard? We're asking you to consider becoming a Life Matters lifeguard. On Life Matters, we cut to the depths of this cultural battle of ideas that has robbed America of its core values and robbed the innocent of their right to life. Anything you can pledge is appreciated. But if you pledge $19 a month, we will make you part of the Life Matters lifeguard team, getting you the important tools and dynamic information to help save lives and encourage others in understanding the lurking dangers in today's deadly cross-currents of culture. Your pledge helps us with our costs of broadcast. It keeps the full understanding of the right to life going out over our numerous radio stations and also facilitates the important podcast that carries even more programming. Please go to the front page of the Life Matters website and click on the donate button. Your donation is deeply appreciated.
Do you hear that sound? That's the sound of a child's heart beating. It can be measured as early as 16 days after conception when mom, she may not even know she's pregnant yet. And yet that unique human life, that boy or girl, has his or her own blood supply and circulatory system dependent on mom. The facts are on our side, and facts are terrible things to waste.
California Pro-Life is dedicated to winning California back for life. For more information, go to californiaprolife.org. And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
On January 22nd, 73, the Supreme Court released its two interlocked abortion decisions regarding the laws of the entire nation. They're only dealing with two different states. In Texas, the issue of Roe v. Wade came before them, and they wrote a decision. Justice Blackmun was the author. But in fact, that dealt with Texas law, but the implications of the decision were that all the laws of all 50 states needed to be struck. You may have heard that before. Doe versus Bolton. Remember that name? When people tell you about Roe v. Wade and how it authorizes a woman's right to choose and how a woman has a right to her own body. Do you know that they're lying? Do you know that Justice Blackmun in Roe versus Wade specifically denied that right in writing? Well, you know there's a lot of people that'll tell you they understand Roe v. Wade, and they'll explain it, and that, it's in the first trimester alone that it legalizes abortion. Other folks will tell you, yes, it's only in the first and second trimester. And then other folks that have a little more knowledge of what's going on will say, no, because of the health exception, it legalizes abortion on demand. But if you read Roe versus Wade, you'll see that strangely, it refers to all of those things and yet says that it doesn't do any of them. That's right. It literally doesn't make any sense. And Roe versus Wade, in fact, Justice Blackmun spends a lot of time talking about the history of pregnancy, believe it or not, and how medicine and the law has viewed pregnancy. It gets almost tear-jerkingly boring as he goes into it. But he's saying he understands it all, but he concludes that when it comes to when life begins, science just hasn't decided, and we don't know when life begins. Wait a second. He takes all that time to say that? The fact is we do know when life begins, and we have since 1836 with the invention of the modern microscope. when Sir Thomas Berry observed mammalian conception. He observed it in rabbits. But the extrapolation doesn't need to go very far. That's when we know life begins. But there's so much more that Roe does that's so dishonest, so that we even have liberal legal scholars like Alan Dershowitz and Cass Sunstein and Professor Laurence Tribe. You've probably heard some of these names. They all support abortion, but they don't like Roe. Let me quote Laurence Tribe for you. Quote, "One of the most curious things about Roe is that behind its own verbal smokescreen, the substantive judgment on which it rests is nowhere to be found." That is from Laurence Tribe, one of the leading leftist legal scholars. There's so much more, though. You need to know that even the most notorious pro-abortion Supreme Court justice, the known feminist and abortion advocate, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg, was openly faulting the court's approach in Roe v. Wade. And she said quite clearly, this is not actually about a woman's freedom. It wasn't woman-centered. It's about a doctor's freedom to practice his profession as he thinks best. It wasn't woman-centered. It was physician-centered. She did not like Roe v. Wade. She did not approve of it. She would much have preferred it not be on the grounds of supposed privacy. And that's why Roe v. Wade is held in disdain. But the reason abortion on demand is legal is because of the companion decision, which never gets discussed. I do discuss that in my book. That's The Evil Twins, Roe and Doe, How the Supreme Court Unleashed Medical Killing. And again, that's available for pre-order on Amazon and at newregencypub.com. Right now, we're talking about Roe. It doesn't make sense. Let me go into a little bit more depth. As I mentioned, one of the clear statements he says is, we don't know when life begins. But oddly, he had just got done explaining the long history of knowledge regarding pregnancy, and he has to intentionally ignore known, documented scientific facts of his day and of previous days. But the fact is that it's very confusing what he is saying. Secondly, he spends a lot of time on the Hippocratic Oath. Now, as you know, and as I started off in this program, the Hippocratic Oath has been around for a long time, 3,000 years, and it's been a guideline for ethical medicine, that these people with the intimate knowledge of how the human body works, and you only see a doctor when you're vulnerable, when your body is in need, they swear they will never harm, and in particular never kill a patient in their care. So the oath has been around a long time, and ironically, Justice Blackmun talks about that at length. And then, believe it or not, he wraps up by saying, well, the Hippocratic tradition, even though we've been following it for 3,000 years, it was a very eccentric and at that time followed by only a few in Greek culture, the Pythagoreans. And since other people in Greek times disagreed with it, well, we're in a position that we can disagree with it, which is a stunning conclusion. He had just got done. He wrote about 4 paragraphs explaining the history of the oath, how it has been passed down through the ages, and yet he dismisses it by saying, in those days, some people disagreed, and therefore we're free to disagree. It's quite alarming. He goes much farther. And many of you think, and the media thinks and repeats, that Roe v. Wade gives a woman a right to bodily integrity. Remember? The right to choose. But Justice Blackmun is explicit in Roe v. Wade. He, in fact, refers to the feminist amici briefs. Those are the briefs that were filed for the case where they wanted that right to choose, the right to bodily integrity. And he is explicit in rebuking them. He said this decision is not granting the right to do whatever you want with your body. We do not respect that as a legal principle. You do not have a right to choose whatever you want to do, and the right to bodily integrity is not granted by this decision. And he clearly rebukes what you might call the feminist worldview. So how did we get here? It's in the companion decision, Doe versus Bolton. And in Doe versus Bolton, not only when he suggests that there should be regulations, by the way, in Roe v. Wade, he specifically says The states should be free to regulate abortion. Well, then how come they haven't been? Because of Doe versus Bolton. In Doe versus Bolton, he said there's an exception to all of this. And that is if in the mind of the physician, the life or health of the mother, and he doesn't use the word mother, he says woman, because if she's a mother, you're acknowledging the child's life. The life or health of the woman is in any way endangered, he can do the abortion. Two important things. It's in his mind. It doesn't say if she asks. He says it's dependent on what he thinks. And that's very important. We know that Justice Ginsburg understood that Blackmun is only empowering doctors to kill at their own discretion. And that the word health, he went on to define. It isn't just her physical health or the health of the child. You can do an abortion on a physically healthy mother who has a physically healthy baby if by health, what he means, and he spells out, it can be the emotional, psychological, sociological health. Any of these factors can be considered the health of the woman in the mind of the abortionist. That's why abortion on demand is legal, because the Doe versus Bolton decision, that's the companion decision that makes Roe so incredibly lethal, and people don't understand that. So we've been talking about Roe. It does not make any sense. As was said in the dissent to Akron, Sandra Day O'Connor said, Roe v. Wade has no foundation in either law or logic. It's on a collision course with itself. It's Doe versus Bolton, the conjoined twin of Roe v. Wade. It's never talked about. You need to know about it. You need to know as you think about the abortion debate, be aware that Roe v. Wade is, in a sense, enacted and all of its confusion is cleared by giving the scalpel to the abortionist and being told, whatever in your mind you want to do, we free you to do it. Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton, they are conjoined twins of death. So again, my book coming out in spring, The Evil Twins, Roe and Doe, How the Supreme Court Unleashed Medical Killing. It's available for pre-order now on Amazon and on New Regency Pub. Thanks for listening.
Learn more about everything in today's show online at lifematters.life, where you'll find all the resources you need to protect life. Life Matters is a production of the California Pro-Life Council, the state affiliate of National Right to Life.